Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to another episode of Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents here on OpenShift TV. I am Chris Short, executive producer of OpenShift TV. Today, I am joined by the wonderful and always brilliant Scott McBrien, who's brought a special guest with him. Scott, would you like to introduce yourself and then introduce your guest, maybe?
Sure. So challenge accepted on the brilliance. Maybe I will not introduce this guest with the wrong title or, what have you. So for those of you who haven't seen it before, this is the second episode of Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents. Our guest today is Ken Hess, who is an author and editor for the Enable SysAdmin community, which if you've not seen it is redhat.com/sysadmin.
Awesome site.
And yeah, we will be talking with Ken about said site and contributions. And if you've not seen the format before, we do a little bit of interview for about 20 or 30 minutes, and then we transition into some practical hands-on demo. So I'm thinking I'll take some inspiration from Ken's couple of articles on 10 most essential Linux commands and kind of parlay that into 10 essential sysadmin Linux commands, and we'll talk about them. So without further ado, Ken, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Oh gosh, what can I say? I've worked with Red Hat Linux for 25-ish years, and I think ever since Red Hat Linux 4.0. I started the local Linux users group here in Tulsa, Oklahoma back in '96. And let's see, what else? I'm a community manager for Enable SysAdmin and have done tons of technology writing, technology journalism. And also I've been a sysadmin for that 25-ish years. So Linux, Windows, virtualization, all kinds of stuff.
So you've seen it all a little bit. Yeah. Similar journey to mine, kind of jumping into Linux just a couple years later. I was first introduced to Red Hat Linux 5, I think. 5.2 maybe.
5.2 is pretty good. I was like somewhere in the 4s.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually several years ago was working in professional services. And was at a customer site, and I found a Red Hat Linux 7.2 box, not RHEL 7.2, a Red Hat Linux 7.2. And I went to the manager of the team that I was supplementing, and I was like, "Hey, I just found this thing," and he's like, "Really?" Click, 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 click. It's not in the inventory anymore. Find it now. It's like, okay, good to know.
Oh, well, alrighty then.
Yeah, that's system administration at its finest right there.
Yeah.
So Ken, I've actually got my Enable SysAdmin Tumblr right here that no one can read because it's too small. But I wanted to ask you, so there's a lot of great Linux content. I know that talking with Jason Hibbets, who's another editor over there, that you guys try to keep it less Red Hat and more Linux. So there's stuff that applies to a bunch of different Linuxes, not just Red Hat distros. But where would you like to see the site and its content be going in the next year?
Well, our official start date was June 1st of 2019, which has been just maybe a year and a half-ish. Where I would like to see it go is for it to be kind of a technology watering hole for system administrators, Linux system administrators, and those who are transitioning to Linux. And I hope to have a lot more introductory content and a lot more content that draws those new people in, like I say, from Windows or Mac, or maybe from a non-technology role. So that's where we're really headed.
So I remember back in June 2019, you guys put down the commitment that you were going to publish a new article every day, which now you're, I think, drastically exceeding.
Yeah. like this week, we're going to publish 8 articles. We've been publishing 7 to 8 for at least the last 5 or 6 months. And that's where we hope to stay for a while. Eventually, I think we're going to publish 9 or 10 per week, which means there'll be some Saturday content. We've had a little bit already, but I really want to get where we have Saturday, maybe even Sunday content.
All right.
Nice. I like a good Sunday read.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
the weekend ones are going to be a little less hard technical. They're going to be more what we call weekender type content, like, building your home network and so on. So
Yeah, and I've seen some of the call for papers for things like, how to Linux game and a variety of other. I think you use the term water cooler or watering hole type of situation. So, what kind of content is really stuff that you're looking to attract on Enable SysAdmin?
Well, I really like beginner type content, introductory material, intro to Ansible, intro to the Linux file systems, intro to Linux networking, anything that's new for someone coming into the field, either as a junior sysadmin or from Windows or Mac or whatever. Introductory content is always welcome. But the thing that really does very well on our site, besides the how-to type stuff, believe it or not, is career articles. We have a few career articles that have done very, very well. Like not from the standpoint of, there's 10,000 jobs available in system administration, but from the viewpoint of, this is my story. This is how I got into Linux system administration. I've written mine. Tyler Kerrigan, who's another one of the editors and community managers, has written his. And we've had some of the community members as well write those, and they always do very well because, even though we have the internet now and zillions of web pages where we can get information, it's still a mystery sometimes for some folks in how to break into a new career, especially like system administration, where you think you have to have years of experience and you have to be a hardware nerd and all this stuff, which none of that's true. There's opportunities for people at all levels.
So that leads me to an interesting follow-up. How did you get into system administration?
Funny story.
They always are.
Yeah, I used to be a chemist, and I was actually working on my PhD in biochemistry years ago, and it was weird because my job became less and less chemistry and more computers. In fact, the guys, at the end of the hall with the bench and the little testers and things, they were the computer gurus back then. And, it was just a natural transition. I became interested in computers, and all of our instruments ran with computer control. You had all these weird serial interfaces and things. And, over time, chemistry became less and less palatable, and computers became more and more palatable. So I basically just transitioned about the time, that Novell was big. I got certified in Novell, and which was actually Unix based. And then, we transitioned to Banyan Networks, which was Unix based. And, I guess kind of the rest is history when I started with WorldCom back in '95.
Nice.
Yeah, that's how I got in. We messed with Windows, and Linux was brand new at the time. And so that's kind of how it happened.
That's amazing.
What about you, Chris Short?
Oh, I've got a story. Let's see. I was 14. I was working in a warehouse, and one of the big projects that summer this is the summer I went from turning 14 to 15, was barcoding everything, right? Like every rack in the warehouse, every position, everything had to have a barcode, and they would all correspond, and that whole system would make all of our, packing and shipping operations faster. Made total sense, right? Turns out there were a lot of computers involved. And being, one of the younger ones in the room, I was one of the more savvy ones with the computers. And the next summer that I went to go apply for a job, they're like, we would like you to apply for the IT department. And I became a MIS technician. That was my official title. And I was working on Windows NT network stuff at the time, and we were switching from 10 base T to 100 meg internet or Ethernet, and yeah, like doing all the cabling. Actually, like had to build some computer components and build computers and everything else. That springboarded me into the next big job where I was actually introduced into Linux. So yeah, I was introduced into Linux in the late 90s, so 98. And I was working at an ISP at the time, and we were switching from Windows NT over to Linux-based, software for doing all of our dial-up ISPing.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Ken, getting back to enable sysadmin content. Sorry, I took us down a sidebar a little bit, memory lane. So one of the things that I like about enable sysadmin is that you guys have attracted some really interesting authors, like Dan Walsh, who is notably of SE Linux fame, but now he does a lot of content on containers. So how do you attract folks like that? What kind of folks are you looking to attract to your community?
Well, we're looking for people with, a good deal of experience as a sysadmin. Although I say a lot of experience, we accept articles from people at all levels, of course. Glad to have anybody from, the rankest beginner to the saltiest old guy with the keyboard on his lap. But the kind of content we're seeking is, like I said before, we're really looking for how-tos, one simple concept per article. For example, to do something with Ansible, deliver a config file with Ansible. That's a good one. I love Ansible myself. It's a great opportunity to automate some of your environment, especially if you have a lot of servers like I always have had. When you have 400 servers in a single data center, you need some way to manage those. And so, stories like that. How do you manage 400 servers? That would be a great article. But how we attract people is I put out the word on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. I haven't done any Instagramming yet. I still am a little gun shy of that one. But, we keep the word out pretty well. We also contact internal people in Red Hat, and you don't have to work for Red Hat to write for Enable SysAdmin. We encourage anyone who wants to write for us to do so. And, we help people along. We have copy editors. We have 2 copy editors. We have 4 of us internal editors. So, the content will get looked at for sure. We look at every piece of content that comes in. We vet the content, and, we put it through the publication process, which is really nice. We have a Trello board, which the community can see. Let's say that you're an author from some company that's not Red Hat. Well, we invite you to our Trello board, and you can see the articles moving through that process. So that's pretty nice.
So if I had an idea for an article and I wanted to contribute it to Enable SysAdmin, how would I do that?
You could go on to our site, redhat.com sysadmin/join-community and fill out the form. And it's only used for internal purposes only. We don't sell it or give it to anybody else, even in the rest of the organization. We only use it for us. And fill in that form, which has some details about yourself. And that's one way of getting in. The other way is just send us an email to enable-sysadmin@redhat.com. Tell us about yourself, what you want to write about. If you don't know what you want to write about, guess what? I've got dozens of article ideas on that Trello board. And you can pick from those. You can take one of those titles or ideas and make up your own. Or if you work with something, you can write an article about it, or at least pitch the article to us, and we'll see if it works. But we're really, I think, as you said at the very beginning, we're Red Hat oriented, but we're really kind of generic Linux as well. I mean, we're not going to write about other distributions, but certainly if you want to write about Red Hat Enterprise Linux, CentOS, Fedora, or any other Red Hat derivative, that's just fine. And we encourage that. But it needs to be generic enough so that someone working with possibly a Linux that isn't Red Hat derivative, they could still work on it.
All right. So, you've been around the industry for a long time. You've used a lot of Linux over the years. What is one thing that you see people do all the time that you wish they would do differently?
Oh, wow. If there's a real no-no as far as my book is concerned, don't install an X interface or a graphical interface on a server. It's probably not something I want you to do. And I've seen people do it in enterprises, and it's, you can secure it, but it's a major security hole. And I'd rather see people not do that. And it's okay on, of course, desktop systems or virtual machines, that you protect. But that's one thing I don't like when people do. The other thing I don't like to see people do is when something goes wrong with the system, instead of fixing it, they just blow it away. And that's really something that's occurred with high frequency on virtual machines and containers. They think, oh, well, it's expendable. It's like, wait a minute, that's a production system. You can't just blow it away. You can't just re-image this system at will. So those are some things that I wish people would do different. I wish people would feel like that virtual machines are just as valuable and have just as much, right to be as physical machines. And so that's probably more of a pet peeve than a professional thing, but still.
So have you heard the story about treating your machines as pets versus treating them as cattle?
Oh, that's funny. I like that. But I always have, I baby my systems and take really good care of them. And so I guess I've always treated mine like pets, or maybe even children.
Well, I know that a lot of the deployment methodologies we're using now have skewed towards the cattle mentality. Like, when you see a field full of cows, it's like they don't have names, right? They have little like ear tags with a number or something. And when one of them gets sick, you don't go over and soothe it and talk about poor Bessie.
Well, that's an interesting point, because a long time ago, we used to name our servers like cartoon names and fun names, like Snuffy and Sparky and, whatever, and we would have themes run through an entire data center where we would have all like Calvin and Hobbes names, or, whatever cartoon characters. I think there was a Ren and Stimpy at one time, but then when bigger corporate stuff came down, they made us change the names to It was like location, function, number, like toll DB001 meant that it was a, in the Tulsa data center, it was a database server and it was the first one. It's like, no, man, I don't know the personality of that server. You know, it needs to be a pet. I need to know that Snuffy has an issue with its HBA card. I don't, you know, if you say, so Ken, how about that toll DB001? I'm like, I don't know what that is. But if you said Snuffy or Sparky or Ren or Stimpy, I would know exactly what system you're talking about. I could tell you where it is in the rack, but toll DB001, no clue. So
Yeah.
I get that mentality, and I like pets versus cattle. In fact, what a great article that would be, Chris Short.
Chris Short's all about the cattle.
It's already been written, right? Like there's so many articles about how we should treat infrastructure more ephemerally and declaratively, right? So that we can just state, this is what I want. And if something falls out of state, put it back for whatever reason, stability, security, so forth, so on, right? Like the whole idea of OpenShift is that, like, if I say this deployment has 17 pods, it's always going to have 17 pods. If I try to increase it to 18, it will back it down to 17, right? Like that's declarative infrastructure. And that's treating things like cattle, not necessarily pets, right? Because those pod names all have different, just random IDs, right?
Well, I think it probably also boils down to like scale, the expectations of your infrastructure. Like back in the day, when we treated everything as named, computers were super expensive, and you might have 10 of them in your whole population.
Right.
Whereas now it's like, oh, it's Tuesday at 3:00. Let me spin one up for an hour and then I'll kill it off. Like the magnitude that we operate at and the scale at which we operate at is different. And there are still a lot of instances out there where, you have this lovingly crafted artisanal system that you've created for a bespoke purpose, right? But how many of those can one person make?
Not many.
Right.
I've walked into organizations that tried to do it like that, and in the 2010s or whatever you want to call it, and it did not work with the scale that they were trying to go, right? So lots of vulnerabilities, lots of mistakes, misconfigurations, inconsistencies, right? Like, great, you've got a naming scheme, but like none of these systems are the same. So that's where things like Ansible come along and kind of save you and keep things consistent. And you continuously run those Ansible playbooks against your systems so that they are the right version, consistently configured, and so forth, so on. You can't just run it once. It's supposed to be idempotent, so you can run it as many times as you want. Therefore, run it as often as you can, right? Like that's kind of my idea.
Yeah, and I think that I probably operate at that scale now, where I don't care as much about boxes, and where honestly fixing them takes longer than it does to blow it away and make a new one. But at the same time, like there's a lot of customers. I know. Sorry, Ken. There's a lot of customers. Like if you look at maybe somebody who has an embedded Linux running their MRI machine, right? This is a single piece of equipment that costs like hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of dollars.
Right.
And you can't just throw that away and get another one. Right.
No.
And that's where that kind of more handcrafted solution comes about.
But even then, right, like I've been in those environments, right? Like I used to work for an LED manufacturer, right? And they had all these bespoke systems that, yes, it was a Linux box, but it was like a controller arm to move the silicon chip from this piece of equipment to this piece of equipment. But it still needed patches, right? Like it was running RHEL or whatever, right? Like it still needed to be patched, it still needed to be maintained, but it was not on the network. So how do you manage that, right? Like it was never going to be connected to a network. How do you keep something like that consistent? Well, you're only going to go down to the fab so many times a month, right? Like you have to be able to get in and out of there pretty quick. Your maintenance windows are really short, right? Like you've got to have that, update process and configuration change process down to know that those systems are, going to be updated in the right way, right? Like there's a lot of testing that gets done prior just to make sure things don't go haywire, right? Like because there's only one of those in the entire fabs facility, and if it goes down, you're toast, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Was it resume generating event?
Yeah. So
Uh,
yeah, there's a lot of and we see a lot of that in government where there's right like no internet connectivity kind of thing, or no even like network connectivity to other networks. There's like silos of networking, um and like the idea of treating those whole networks as ephemeral is impossible, right? Like there's always going to be those bespoke systems on those networks that need those kinds of hands on, constantly, because at some point in time, somebody put something experimental on there and it went to prod, right? Like it's inevitable, right? At a large enough scale, that will happen in any enterprise.
yeah. And I was actually just on a call before this live stream where somebody was like, "Oh, that's in the upstream for Fedora. Just pull down that package and apply it to RHEL." And I was like, "Oh,
Oh boy. Okay.
right."
I mean,
And I've been places where that has happened. I may have even been the person who did it.
mm,
But longer term, I think that often comes back and bites you.
yeah, I've always been a fan of, if the RPM doesn't exist for me, I need to build it and serve it myself, right? Like I had to do that with HA proxy at one point, where I think RHEL pulled it and put it in a different repo at some point because of some licensing issue. And like, it's like, okay, I can RPM build this. There's the spec file and, the source code done. So it, open source has kind of ubiquitized that capability, but you have to be very careful, because if everybody can contribute code, everybody can contribute bugs. So you need to make sure you know what kind of code you're running on your systems, which goes back to Ken's point, right? Like don't put, GUIs on servers, right? Like it's just another layer that you have to secure, right? Like keep things simple. That's always kind of my mantra, is keep things as simple as possible. And Ansible kind of helps with that. Operators in the Kubernetes world helps with that. There's a lot of tooling out there that helps you maintain simplicity while achieving complexity.
Yeah. So Ken, what is the hardest thing you've had to learn about Linux over your career?
Oh gosh, I guess there's two early on things. The first one was, I'm sure you remember, when you got a new Linux installation, the first thing you had to do was recompile the kernel.
Oh yeah.
And that was pretty tough, because it took hours to go through that questionnaire, the XF config or whatever it was. And I mean, it just took a long time to get it right, to get all your peripherals operational. And the other thing that was really hard was getting a GUI to work. Because you had to go to the XF86 config and answer the questions and change your refresh rate. And you could damage your monitor or your video card if you use the wrong one. That was kind of a pain. So I guess those two, Linux has never been particularly hard to install or to use, but getting certain things to work, they used to be hard. I mean, I haven't compiled a kernel in more than 15 years probably. So,
Yeah, I was about to say, it's been a while for me too. Yeah.
haven't compiled.
Not 15 years, but it's been a while. Yeah.
And I haven't worried about graphical interfaces, because now if you want a graphical interface, you do it on install, or you can just download you do group install, and, you get a desktop environment. But man, it used to be really tough. So those were the practical tough things. I think one of the more obscure problems I had with Linux early on was not getting involved in the OS wars, because all the nerds, of course, especially when I started the Linux users group here locally, like, well, Linux is way more stable than Windows, and they use that voice too. And, it was always a big fight because I always had to work in both worlds. I've always had to work with Windows and, commercial Unisys and Linux. And even a funny story about things being difficult. When I was at WorldCom, and this was in '96, I believe, I installed a Linux system on the network for the help desk and the desktop support guys to use. And I was told by one of the gurus of the group called PC Support, he came over one day and goes, "Do you have a Linux system over here?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "You need to take that Linux system off the network. Linux is not an approved operating system." I just rolled my eyes. I installed Samba and made it look like a Windows NT server. So
Back in the day.
Way back in the day, yeah.
That was hard. That was a hard thing I had to do, was not get involved in the OS wars and not get angry when people said Linux.
Well, there's that old WAV file of Linus Torvalds, right? My name is Linus Torvalds, and I pronounce Linux.
Yeah.
Hello, this is Linus Torvalds, and I pronounce Linux as Linux.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the more challenging things to learn is troubleshooting, mostly because a coworker at a previous position described it to me best. He said, in order to troubleshoot a thing, you need to know every layer of that thing and how they interact with each other. So like if you're talking about troubleshooting a network problem, well, you need to know the physical layer, at least to some extent. You know the IP layer, you need to know the protocol layer, you need to know the port and application layer, because any of those pieces, like that could be where your problem is that's causing your network problem. And it is a hard to learn thing, and because you can go so deep on just about any topic, right?
The OSI reference layer model is 7 layers, and each layer you could literally spend a lifetime learning, right? Like just think about the physical infrastructure that goes into making a computer or network or anything, right? Think about the application layer, all the different languages that are out there now, and everything in between, right? Like there's so much to the OSI model that having to learning it has helped me troubleshoot things so much more than I think a lot of my peers, because they didn't understand that some of those layers actually existed and they were in charge of touching them. You actually have to go configure the right DNS to use internal DNS. It doesn't just happen automatically, kind of thing, back before the DHCP days, right? But
even during DHCP days, right? It's like somebody updates the DHCP server and puts the wrong DNS first.
Oh,
right? And then
chaos ensues.
Yes. So, I'm sorry. What Ken?
Gateway.
Yeah, that's right. Why can't I talk to the internet anymore?
Yeah.
Well, because you're not going there.
What's your default gateway? There's only one in the whole network. Those are the good old days.
Yep. All right. So we've been going for about 35 minutes. I would like to transition to the practical, if that's okay with you guys.
Sure, let's hit it, man.
All right.
It's your show.
Let's see if I can share my screen and not suck at it.
Good news, there's been no Zoom update this week.
This week?
Yeah. The question is, when did you install it? Here we go.
Excellent question. All right. So after it starts, maybe I can kill off this sidebar, because I don't really care about the instructions for this specific lab.
I believe in you. You can do this.
Your faith is misplaced.
I
It's
know.
like calling me a god of RHEL. It's like, I will
I've never
disappoint
said
you.
that.
Oh,
I've
that's
never
true.
said that.
You just said a god. I will disappoint you perpetually. Challenge accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So Ken, you were talking earlier about Ansible.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've seen the, hey, that works pretty good. If you've seen the lab.redhat.com site recently, but down here somewhere, there it is. I've been working with my peers on the Ansible team, and they've put together a couple of Ansible labs for kind of basic getting started with Ansible, my first playbook type stuff.
Very cool. I need
So,
the URL to that thing that you just had.
oh, it's lab.redhat.com.
It's
Oh,
pretty easy. Yeah. I just dropped it in chat for everybody. So yeah. But there's tons of content there. And then there's even there's more stuff out there for every product, right? Like I feel like like Red Hat has one, OpenShift has one. I feel like Ansible has stuff there on their website as well. So just look around. There's plenty of content out there, folks, to learn. And it's a lot like this. It's Katacoda based.
Yeah, which means it's all virtual machines and like live boxes. So that's why I
Mhm.
actually minimize the steps, because we're going to do a live demo. What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, you know,
Yeah, it's
I've only
fine.
had one fail today.
Only one? Oh, I'm
Only
doing
one.
good. I'm
Yeah.
doing good. So, Ken, you've written a couple articles that are 10 essential Linux or 10 more essential Linux commands. And I read through them. And Chris, I will copy and paste these into our chat so you can put them out there if someone would like to read them.
speaking of system names, dig that system name that you have.
Well, because it's a ephemeral box, like literally this box exists for 30 minutes and then dies and goes away. So that's one of those where we can't care about it. It is cattle, yes, in the hardest part of the term. But one of the articles that you put together, Ken, you said top was one of your essential commands. And so if someone hasn't seen top before, this is what it looks like. And up here at the top of top is the kind of system brief information. And then down here are some process stuff. And I know that anyone on this call surely can tell me what's in the process stuff. Like, what is it showing me? Oh, Chris Short didn't know there was going to be a test.
Well, no, I put myself on mute. Hang on. Sorry, I had to mute myself. So what is here? So top is obviously running, right? Like system D is the init system running, right? Like kthread, I have no idea what that is. You can tell me.
well, so we could go through all the individual processes here, but generally, what is this section of information telling you? Like it's updating periodically.
Right.
What's it updating based off of?
So it's updating based off, in this view, activity, right? Like any kind of usage, CPU wise, I believe. I think is the default view. But
that
you
is
can
correct.
actually change that into anything from, and there's more things that you can display here as well. So there's any amount of customization you can do to top that will allow you to do to see exactly what you need in a pretty friendly and easy to use interface.
Yeah.
And Ken?
Oh, I was going to say, you can kill processes here. You can, you've got your uptime. It's actually, top is kind of an amalgam of different programs. You kind of have a VM stat, you have an uptime, you have a process table that dynamically updates. You can change it from this default CPU oriented look to a memory. There's, like Chris was saying, you can change it a dozen different ways, but it's a real-time look at what's going on in your system. If you feel like you have a problem, it's one of the first things I always do is go into top and see, what's burning my CPU, what's burning my memory. Do I have a performance problem? Do I have something that's spiking my load average? Those kinds of things.
Yeah, and that's how I use it too. It's like system experiencing problem first thing, pull up top and kind of get a general read of what's going on. Um, Chris was correct that it sorts based off of percentage of CPU utilization first, and then secondarily sorts on percentage of memory that's being consumed. But there's a whole bunch of commands that you can call here inside of top to reshuffle things, to sort it on different columns or add columns of data. And if you wanted to get really into it, you could. There's a info page for top where it goes through and actually gives you the full command lexicon for utilizing inside of it. So it runs every, I think it's 5 seconds, and will reorganize based off that topmost CPU utilization. The place where I've used it the most recently, web browsers, because every tab now has like JavaScript and other stuff that runs in it. And so it'll show up in the command side as web content. And it's like, and you'll see that it's like using some just abhorrent amount of memory or CPU. And that's probably what's causing your slowdown. But up here in the system brief, we kind of give an overview of how the CPU states are being used or how much memory is being used. And Ken, one of the things that you mentioned was load average. So this is also reported in the uptime command. And what it's showing you is the 1, 5, and 15-minute CPU run queue average depths that's been logged, like not logged like I'm logging messages, but logged as in like the mathematical function logarithm, to kind of smooth out any spikes during those 1, 5, and 15-minute periods. And people will often, in my experience, pull that out and be like, what, it's 30, CPU's so busy. And it's like, yeah, that's probably not true. It may be like there's 30 things out there on the run queue, and that's why you're getting that data there. Mm-hmm. But generally, my experience is if your load average is increasing, you probably have an I/O problem, because as things are waiting for I/O to be retrieved, they're still on the CPU run queue, because they're just waiting for that I/O to come back, and it periodically gets checked. And that's been my experience. It's not always the case, but sometimes.
I had a load average of 60 earlier. My laptop was a little busy.
Web content, I'm telling you, it's the killer.
No, it's all the streaming stuff, man. Right? Like doing video over the web, right? Like it's like amplifies it, right? Like you open too many like tabs with the same video stream in it, and you realize you're processing that same stream like 5 times, and you're like, well, wait a minute. Why? Just
how many terrible things can you do to yourself, Chris Short? Exactly. How many terrible things?
Yeah, like open more tabs. It'll help you, really.
All right. To get out of top, you hit Q to quit. I think Control C probably also works there, but it's native command, because there's like, I was surprised at how many internal to top commands there are. It's a stupid amount. Anyway, so that gets you back. My next top 10 SysAdmin command I use a lot. I bet I need to install it. It's called MTR. It comes with RHEL 7 and 8, and may be available for others, but it's available in the base OS for 7 and 8. MTR is my trace route.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So
I love a good MTR report. That'll tell you all kinds of things.
Yeah, it's now that we're all working from home, it's even more better, because you'll get like your video conferences blinking out, or you're having stuff, and it could be that somebody else on your network is sucking up all your bandwidth, right? You got kids at home and they're all streaming and on pads and whatever else, but it might be that your ISP is doing something janky, and so MTR here helps with that. And what it's doing is it's sending out a series of trace routes and then reporting on it. So we can see here that, for example, this guy, he seems to be losing packets. In reality, I think he's refusing the expired ICMP packets that traceroute sends, because clearly I'm getting good throughput on my video stream and whatnot. And so there are some that will kind of misnomer. But the other nice thing is if it's actually dropping packets, it'll bold the box that's dropping the packet. So it's easy to pick out of your output. And so I use this a lot at another work or another portion of my job where I do some network administration, and all the non-technical users will come up and be like, hey, the Wi-Fi's down. It's like, well, no, actually the Wi-Fi is just fine because that's the part I control. We're all good. But it'll be like the ISP is doing maintenance on a Saturday, and that they're like taking boxes down and jacking up routes and a whole bunch of other stuff.
So I had to use MTR once to troubleshoot a bad network node inside, who was it? A very large ISP's network, and they couldn't find it, but we did. Like, that's how powerful MTR is.
I was on a professional services engagement for a large digital services provider. And it got to the point where we would do kind of the same thing and would find like random bits of hardware that were failing. And that was what was causing our services to not operate correctly. And it got to the point where like I knew the guy in the NOC, and I'd be like, hey, Jimmy, it's Scott. This box is causing a problem. And he'd pull it up and be like, oh, yeah, you're right. We hadn't even been alerted to that. Let me go handle that right now for you. It's like I was the canary in the coal mine for the network infrastructure.
That's not good.
But anyway, so MTR is like one of my favorites. Traceroute's like okay, but MTR like cranks it up to the next level. One of the others that I think is really handy that has fallen out of vogue. So I just installed this package, right, with Yum. And so the interactions that we have with package management now are Yum or DNF. And sadly, they don't provide as much data as RPM does natively. So for example, so we can ask questions like what version is it, what architecture was it built for. You could get this out of maybe a Yum info or a DNF info on this this package. But what about this? So as we're building packages, the maintainer of the package, at least at Red Hat, puts in a change log that tells you what has changed between the different versions. And so more specifically here, these are Bugzilla bug ID numbers that go along with the thing that's been changed in this version. They also log CVEs here. So if you are ever asked by an auditor, has this CVE been fixed? You could pull up the package change log and actually scan the change log entry looking for that CVE number, and then cross-reference it and go yes or no.
That's pretty powerful. I didn't.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So today I learned.
You've probably also seen this. So QI.
Yes. Yeah.
Because this is really being built out of the spec file definition for when you build an RPM.
Yeah.
So all the stuff that you stick in there, like version information, like the RPM GPG signature that's applied after you're done building it, the source RPM that's produced from it, where you built it from, like all that stuff gets embedded in this QI output.
Wow. Nice.
And I'm trying to think of what I was using this for recently. I can't remember. Now. Oh, we were talking about, I know, told you, challenge accepted, failure imminent. Somebody was asking me about this release value because in RHEL, the release value on packages kind of varies from subsystem team to subsystem team. So like here, they're using -3.el8. And some of them you'll see like -3.el8_2. Right. Or on the kernel, they use something a little bit different. Man, if I could spell.
Wow.
All right, so this one has been unpatched, but as we apply kernel updates, there'll be like additional dot numbers that go in here. And basically, like every subsystem team chooses the version extension that makes sense for them to track the changes that they're doing to it. So some you'll see use just serially, right? -1, -2, -3, all the way up. Some will use the additional fields like the kernel because it's a very complex piece of software.
Right.
And then others just like, kind of choose other things that they use. You could find like somebody could use ABC as their extra version number there. But that's specified by the person building the RPM, and it's kind of their version that keeps track of it. Anyway, so I was trying to convince someone that they should not pay attention to extra version numbers because they would just drive themselves insane. So let's see. One that is handy from an administration perspective is alias.
Yes.
Yeah. So these actually get set automatically when you log in through your bash profiles or bash RC. Actually, bash RC is not bash profiles. And for root, you can see that we do some things like when I call copy as root, it really calls copy -I because if my copy is going to overwrite something, it'll ask me first. Or same thing with remove. If I remove a file, it's going to interactively ask me first whether it should or shouldn't do it. But what's really handy is you can build your own lexicon of stuff. Like if you always want to use verbose options on something, you could create an alias that would run that command -v for doing it verbosely. And we'll see another example of how you might use this in just a second when I get to another one of my critical ones. But like as an example of a really complex one, right? Which really does this giant pile of stuff when you run which. And that's set for root when they log in.
Nice.
Have you guys ever made your own aliases for things?
Yeah, I do a bunch of aliases for ls because there's a lot of ls commands that I run, like ls-lart is my favorite because it lists things in reverse order by the last time they were touched or whatever. So like, oh yeah, I just downloaded something, it'll be right there at the end of the line. So like LLA does the -LA, but if I just do ls-lart, this is my alias, all one word. So I just shortened it to LART the other day, and because that's not actually a valid command anywhere, I don't think. So the LART command that you see me run sometimes on my Mac, because that's my main driver, right? Like that it doesn't exist on other boxes that I log into throughout the day. So yeah, I've come to just start typing it back in again, and kind of walked away from the alias a little bit just because I'm too lazy to maintain the aliases across multiple boxes, even though I have like Ansible right here at my disposal.
Yeah. I used to use it a lot for, we would move the port of SSH to other things besides 22. And so like every SCP command, every SSH command, you had to specify the port. Yeah. And of course with SSH, it's a lowercase p. And with SCP, it's an uppercase p.
Oh, of course.
Which is like more irritating. So I would use aliases to kind of just stub in those. So I could still just use SSH or SCP on the command line, and it would go ahead and pull those additional port options in to make my life a little easier.
Nice.
How about you, Ken? Any aliases that you love?
The one that comes to mind is I did LL for ls-l.
That's now standard.
You what?
That's now standard.
Yeah, that's like baked into the OS now.
Yeah, like right there.
Right there. Yeah, it does a ls-l color auto and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Originally it wasn't, but HP Unix had it built in LL, so that I just aliased it everywhere early on. So yeah.
I like that ls is even an alias now.
Well, you have to have -- color, man.
Type in dir. This will be interesting for you.
Oh yeah, that's not That's not. Oh, it is.
Mhm.
What?
Here you go.
QF. Huh.
Core utils.
Now
Yeah.
core util. Interesting.
I bet it's a symlink to CD or like some ls command or something.
Well, if that's what you really want to find out. Nope. No copy paste. Boo.
Don't get it. Boo. That's its own file. That's interesting.
Yep.
It's
See,
very,
you guys learned something new today.
yeah, no kidding.
That's the oh yeah, dynamically linked binary. But yeah, I remember doing that, setting up that alias for COPY and MOVE and dir for folks that were like new to Linux but
Yeah.
came from like a strong DOS background. So one of the other shortcuts I use all the time. All right, so let's say you're troubleshooting a web server problem and you're over here and you're looking at your web server content and you want to go check the logs and you had been there previously. cdminus takes you to the one previous directory in your directory history. So if I do cdminus again, it takes me back over to our www.html. So I use that a lot when I'm troubleshooting.
Nice.
Back before we had things like tmux and screen where you could have multiple shells open and yeah, but that's always really handy. One for rel 7 and 8. Chris, you're going to like this one. Oops, Podman image.
You can do it, I believe.
Yeah, there you go. So Podman is my new one because that's our container application, or container runtime application on RHEL.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But of course, the question I'm always asked, every single time, do you guys ship Docker?
Right. Which, of course we do.
No.
But we don't ship
No,
it.
we don't.
Right.
Yes.
Like, we support it, but like, no, we're not shipping it. Sorry.
But like if you look at the Podman command syntax, it is identical to Docker. Right.
Yeah, you like aliasing Docker to Podman is a thing that we love to do.
Now you're kicking with gas. Oops, Docker. There you go.
Ta-da.
So, and then you just throw that into the system-wide Etsy bash RC, and now everybody gets it.
Yeah.
Do you have Docker? Kind of, mostly, sort of.
Yeah, for the most part. You do lose a couple functions that people often ask about, but yeah, we're getting there with Podman. It's a very, 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 very robust tool, though.
It is, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that because we're a little bit early for spoilers.
Yeah,
I don't always spoil things, but when I do it on a live stream.
There you go.
This is one that I use a lot in larger environments. Have either of you guys seen this?
Yep.
SSH copy ID.
Oh yeah. That's one of my favorites here in the house.
Yeah. Just take your ID file out of your home directory and copy it over to another box and name it the right thing or add it to the right file automatically.
Did you know that it has a precedence? Like if you have RSA key versus like a E02 5519 key, like it'll pick the better encryption one, right? Like it'll pick the ED2 5591 or 19 as opposed to the RSA.
I knew that did that with RSA versus DSA, but I didn't know that they had made it even more voluminous in its application.
There you go. Big word of
look. I got $5 words here, Chris Short.
Yeah, I keep all my words to 5 characters, not $5.
I need to install this one too. This one I use a fair amount.
Oh, this is one of my favorite all-time projects.
Yeah, but word of warning, Some places actually forbid the usage of this utility
Yes.
because of how it operates.
Right.
So I'm just going to do myself because that won't cause any problems. But essentially what it's doing is it's scanning that target host or IP address and connecting to the first 65,535 ports on it to see if there's something running. So we can see that this one has the cockpit port open and SSH port open. The reason that places will not allow you to run it, will be very angry if you run it, is if you run it across the network, there's this huge pile of connections that emanate from your system to some other system. So if you are running certain types of network infrastructure, like smart switches, they'll actually view that as some kind of attack and like turn off ports and send alerts and other stuff. So
this is one of those tools you got to be careful with, but it is super helpful to figure out, like, is that port open or not?
Right.
What is actually listening on that port?
There's also a I've not done it in forever. I'd have to look at the syntax, but you can basically like write a TCP connection, basically make an individual TCP connection to a port, and then tell it to time out after a little bit if it's not able to make the connection. So if you're looking for a specific port, that's probably the better route to go.
Yes.
Because then you're sending a single connection.
It's -P, and then you just specify the port number. Yeah. And
for what? For Nmap?
Yeah, for Nmap.
Oh, so I was thinking about
P22 and then the host name. Yeah.
Yeah, I've used in like Python. There's a call to like make a TCP connection.
Yeah.
So you can test to see if the port's available before you then like make additional programming decisions. But that's the most nicer way.
Nice.
And so we're at 8. I don't think we're going to make it to 10 because it's already 3:32.
Well, I mean, yeah, the top 8. We're
top 8 because we don't have time for 10.
I mean, I got a little bit of time if you want, but what are your next 2? What were the next 2 you're going to mention? Just so folks don't miss the top 10.
Well, what did Ken want to say?
Oh, I was going to ask if I could just take a second, because I think you guys said it early on about sudoers with enable sysadmin.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we've got really 2 levels so far, and we're going to add more, but really we have 2 levels right now of authors, I guess, accolades or whatever you want to call them. The first one is called Run Level 3 Club. And what that is when you publish 3 articles, you become a member of the Run Level 3 Club. And that has certain perks and things that go with it. But the sudoers level, and you'll see that on articles, you'll see next to an author's name, they'll say sudoer. What that is that person has published at least 10 articles with Enable SysAdmin. So once you become a member of the sudoers, you've published 10 articles, and that's within a year's time. You get to get involved with our conference calls. There's a sudoer conference call where we discuss directions for the site. We discuss calls for papers. We discuss all kinds of topics, and we let you guys talk and discuss whatever you want to talk about. So those are the 2 levels right now, but I just wanted to clear that up because we were talking about the sudoers.
Oh, yeah, the Tumblr.
Yeah.
So I think I'm a Run Level 5.
Well, I fully credit Jason Hibbets and my contributions to opensource.com for getting my job here at Red Hat. So that
he's to
Justin
blame.
Nemmers, yeah. No, well, Justin Nemmers and him, yeah.
Well, publishing is good for your career. I just want to say.
It is. It really is. I mean, I have gotten great benefit out of just blogging, right? Like tremendous accolades and such from just writing blogs.
Yep, it's incredible. I mean, a lot of people are, reluctant to write or whatever, but honestly, it's one of the best things you can do for your career, because every time you see a job description, it'll say, must be an effective communicator, written and verbal. Well, you can prove it if you point to articles that you've written.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
Very
so
true.
that's my small plug.
No, it's a good
No,
plug. I dropped
absolutely.
the link in chat and everything. So yeah, it's a good plug. You want to send us
I
off,
think
Scott?
I think that's an excellent place to like wrap up, Chris.
I completely agree with you, sir. Let's
That's right.
let's
Top
say
8 it
goodbye.
is.
Top 8.
Because I'm not good enough. I'm not godly enough for a top 10.
Wow, look at you. And you're on this show. It's amazing. Sorry, I didn't mean that as bad as it came out.
That's fine. I'll just cry
Okay.
myself to sleep tonight on my giant pillow.
I still love you, Scott, and I'm glad you have a giant pillow to cry on. Ken, it was great having you. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you everyone out there that tuned in to watch. I think my G-chat was a little noisy earlier, maybe. I'm not sure who that was, but it was either me or Scott. I blame myself because I'm the producer, and that's what I do. It could have been back on the streaming box too. I don't think so though, but yeah, unless well, Google has done weird stuff and Chrome is open, so I don't think I have Gmail. But anyways, thank you all for tuning in. We will catch you all tomorrow. I have a lot of meetings in the morning. Oh, that's not fun. But at 11 we have the in the clouds with Red Hat leadership. Satish will be joining us from our managed services. So with IBM's recent managed services move and our kind of, managed services thing, we'll have a little discussion about all that. Yeah. So it'll be fun. So please tune in. First showing is 11 a.m. tomorrow, 1500 UTC for In the Clouds with Red Hat leadership. Be an interesting day. So yeah.
Thanks,
take it
Chris.
easy, y'all. Thank you.
See you in a couple weeks, everybody.
See you.